So today we are going to talk about one of the most stressful situations of all time, and that is losing a reptile in your house. So if you're here watching this today, I really wish you the best, and I hope that this is not your situation right now, because I would not wish that upon any person ever. But hopefully after we cover this video, I hope that it can give you more tips and insight on how to find your reptile and how to avoid these types of situations in the first place. So I have lost a couple of my reptiles for the very first time while living in this apartment, and it is the worst experience ever. I actually just lost a leopard gecko a couple days ago, and it's just not fun. So I have lost 2 leopard geckos. One was gone for about a day. The other one was gone for about 3 days. I also lost Bowie once, my Brazilian rainbow boa. And I also lost a crested gecko at nighttime, but luckily I heard it. So I was able to go into the reptile room and catch Cookie in the act of escaping and then get Cookie back into the enclosure. So I just want to start off with how you can avoid losing a reptile in the first place. And that is basically just making sure that your enclosures are very safe and secure. If there is any chance that your animal can escape, there's a good chance that it will, and you always need to keep that in mind. You don't want there to ever be a risk, because when there's a risk involved, there's a really high chance that the animal is going to escape. I learned this with my leopard geckos. So with my first leopard gecko, I had one of those slide and snap in enclosures, and I just simply didn't slide the enclosure shut all of the way, and I didn't think that my leopard gecko would escape, and he did. And the second time was actually with my gecko condominium. So a couple of days ago, I did mention that there is a little bit of an area at the top of the gecko condominium. So it's best to place the items within the gecko condominium, kind of near the center. That way they can't climb up on it and potentially escape from the side. I did all of that, and I literally taped the gecko condominium shut completely from the front, and Papaya was still able to escape and get out of it. So if there's any risk whatsoever, just don't take that risk. And honestly, I just completely stopped using the gecko condominium and put my animals back in tanks, because I just am not going to leave that risk whatsoever. I learned my lesson, and I don't want any of you guys to lose any of your animals either. So again, the gecko condominium can be great for, I would recommend for Pac-Man frogs or salamanders. Anything that can climb, I just wouldn't risk it, and I wouldn't put the African fat tails or leopard geckos in there anymore. I'm just straight up not using it, and I learned my lesson. Another tip for not losing an animal is to simply check on your animals every single day, which is something that you should be doing anyway. There's never a time that you shouldn't be checking on your animal at least once during the day, just to make sure that they're all okay and you're taking care of them. I know when it comes to reptiles, you don't have to literally feed them or do much every single day, but you should be checking on them no matter what. So if you did potentially lose an animal, at least you can go and check and see that they're missing, rather than just not check on them often and then you have no idea how long your animal's been missing for. And it's just going to be harder to find them, and they may have gotten farther away than you intend. So just check on your animals. When I lost my Brazilian rainbow boa, I did not close the glass enclosure all of the way. So be very careful, close all of your enclosures, put weights on them if you have to. Just make sure that everything is secure. Use locks, use whatever you need to do. You don't want to lose your animal. It is not worth it. It's not worth the stress. It's just a horrible, horrible situation. Oakley right here is perfect, and she has never escaped, so you are the goal. So not losing a reptile seems pretty easy. It's very kind of like obvious things, but like people make mistakes and things happen all of the time. My friend lost her corn snake. Corn snakes and leopard geckos, I think, are the most common reptiles that are lost within people's houses. I'm sure there are many more, but like I typically always hear that leopard geckos escape and corn snakes. So if you have a corn snake, also just make sure that the lid is very secure. Weigh it down if you have to. Use locks, use whatever you need to use. You don't want your animal to escape ever. My friend actually lost her corn snake because she had it in a kind of like a container that snapped shut on the sides. but if your snake can still find its way to like squiggle through and squeeze through any type of place, it will do it. That's what Bowie did too. I literally left like about this much space just because I wanted a little bit more ventilation going on within the enclosure, and just with that tiny little bit of space, Bowie was able to squeeze through and escape through it. So now I'm going to move on to the second portion of this video, and it's what to do when you've already lost your animal within your house and you're trying to find it. So the very first thing that I would recommend is to not panic, which is going to be very, very hard, because when I first lost my first reptile in my house, I full on like lost my crap. Like I was crying, I was freaking out, I was tearing the house apart. You don't want to do that. You just want to remain calm. The last time that I just lost Papaya, she was only gone for about like 45 minutes, maybe a half hour, because I remained calm and I looked around, and then I was able to find her way easier because I wasn't an emotional mess. So you just want to stay really nice and calm. It will make the whole experience way less stressful, and you'll just be more productive and be able to find the animal. So my second bit of advice would be, no matter what type of reptile you have to think like your reptile. So if you have a snake, they like to be in little cramped spaces that are dark. So you're going to want to be looking in tiny little crevices and going through and looking in corners, in shoes. Same for leopard geckos. They're going to go into tiny little spots that are really dark, and they're probably just going to want to sleep during the day. Another tip would be to actually look at nighttime, because a lot of reptiles are more active at nighttime. So if you have a snake that's lost, if it's a corn snake for instance, it might be better to look at nighttime. And the best thing to do, it's gonna sound super crazy. I've looked this stuff up online before because I was helping my friend who lost her corn snake. And the tip is actually to put down a lot of plastic bags around the rooms. You can do it just like everywhere. Turn all the lights off and just be quiet and listen. You want to listen for that animal potentially moving on top of that paper bag, so that way you can come out and find them, because they're going to be coming out at that time to look for food and hunt. So that's just a better time to be out looking, because otherwise if you're looking during the day, they're just going to be sleeping somewhere. So it's totally up to you and how you want to go about it. A lot of reptiles also are going to be looking for warmth. So the number one place to look if you lose a reptile is under your refrigerator. That is where most leopard geckos are actually found. That's where Kiwi was found. So definitely look under the refrigerator, because that is just like the number one place that these animals like to go to. It's a really great hiding spot. It's dark under there and it's warm. Depending on how long your animal has been missing, there's a good chance that they didn't get too far, so maybe it's best to close all of the doors in the house, put towels up against them, and check every single individual room and make sure that the animal isn't escaping into another room while you're looking for them. If it's a reptile, it's probably most likely going to be sleeping if you're looking during the day, as I mentioned. So it's not really that much of a big deal, but if you're going to be looking at nighttime, definitely keep those doors shut. Another tip that I would recommend is to be very, very gentle while looking through everything, because Papaya, my leopard gecko, was actually under my bed in a beach bag. So you just have to be very careful, because you don't want to like grab a bag really hard and then realize that your animal's in there and hurt them. You don't want to just like shove your foot in a shoe before checking it, because you might hurt your animal. So that's just another tip. Check every single little crevice and just be very, very gentle with everything that you're doing, because they can be potentially anywhere. Another tip that I have heard is to look for poop around your house. So if you can find any poop whatsoever, that's a little trail of where your animal has been. So just keep an eye out for that poop, because those are going to be hints for where your animal likes to go around at nighttime. Another tip would be to supply water around, or food, or just like kind of like a lure. You're kind of like using bait for your animal. So if it's like a gecko or something, maybe just like leave out a container of super worms or something. Maybe your animal will turn up trying to get them. Another tip would be to literally just sit at nighttime in the dark and listen. Just try to listen for any movement whatsoever. Those paper bags would be a great way to be able to listen. When I lost Papaya for that half hour, it was ridiculous, because I was just trying to listen in the reptile room and I kept hearing this scratching sound on a bag, and I was like, okay, that has to be her. Like, where is she? So I found the bag where I heard the sounds coming from, and lo and behold, it was just a random super worm that was just making a ton of noise up against this bag. So it was not her, but it is a way to try and find your reptiles too. It's also a way to find random bugs that are missing in your house, because that's normal when you're a reptile keeper. So yeah, just depending on what type of reptile you have to think like your reptile. Think about what they like to do, what their behaviors are. Try to think like, what would make them feel safe and secure? What places would you go if you were a leopard gecko? And Papaya, of course, wanted to go into a tiny little crevice under my bed. It's nice and dark. She felt nice and secure in there. That's where she went. Kiwi felt really safe and warm under the refrigerator, so that's where he went. Bowie actually went in my closet underneath a dresser in a corner. Again, always tucked away somewhere that they feel nice and safe and secure. My friend Michelle actually lost one of her snakes once, and she was watching a scary movie and her snake literally slithered onto the TV and scared the crap out of her. So not everyone is going to be that lucky and just have their animal turn up like completely out of nowhere in the open. Usually they're going to be hiding because they are reptiles. This girly is escaping on her own. So yeah, you just gotta be really careful. When my crested gecko Cookie escaped, what actually happened was Cookie is in an Exoterra enclosure and it has the little lock on it, which I did lock the door. However, there was a little branch or something, like some little plastic fake plant was sticking out of the side of the door. So because of that, Cookie was able to get the door loose even though it was locked, and Cookie just completely jumped out, and I just heard the thump in the middle of the night and it was really loud, so I just like ran in the reptile room, and then Cookie was just sitting there on the floor, so I picked him up even though he's super crazy, put him back in his enclosure and actually locked it, make sure that everything was secure. Just have to be very, very careful that everything is always secure, because these guys have nothing better to do at nighttime than to look for ways to escape their enclosure. So if you are in this situation, I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for you that you can find your animal. If you're watching this, I hope that this can help prevent you from ever losing an animal, because it is just the worst situation of all time. It's so, so, so stressful. So I just really hope that you guys are being extra careful. The gecko condominium, I wouldn't recommend it anymore, because there was that tiny little space, and of course my gecko was able to get out of that. So it's not worth the risk whatsoever. So just do what you think is best for your animals. If you have a missing animal right now, I really hope that it turns up soon and you can find it. I know that these situations are just not fun whatsoever. So good luck. If you guys have any other tips and tricks on how to find a reptile in your house, or places that they like to hide that you think would be helpful, please leave it in a comment below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.